Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm sure at this point, most of you have several thoughts in mind. The first thought we'll just clarify right away. Yes, I understand that I'm very fortunate that my children have taken after my wife. The second thought I'm sure that you have is, I wonder what Jim's going to say. I think predominantly the people that have green little badges that say ICMA staff. And probably the third thing that you're out thinking is, I wonder if anything he says is going to mean anything to me. So let me start down the journey and see if we can answer some of those questions. But before I do that, what I'd like to do is just take a little bit of time for a little bit of personal privilege and just share with you that yesterday when you left this arena and you were wondering why they were playing a sappy love song, that was because I was trying to get really good brownie points with my wife. See, yesterday was our 25th wedding anniversary, and she had to spend that time shaking hands. And so while we didn't really get a whole lot of quiet time yesterday, the ability to hold her hand and walk out of this arena, thinking about what it was like 25 years ago, absent of the rice, was just a silent way to say thank you very publicly for somebody who's just been a tremendous gift to me. Nice. I do want to take a moment to thank the community of Presque Isle. They're back home watching this on the internet. You know, I'm the second manager that we've been able to determine that comes from a community of under 10,000 to serve in this role. And that means that there's a whole lot of people that are picking up a whole lot of pieces that are falling on the side. And the council has blessed us, the department heads back at home, my principal support person, Judy, but most importantly, one of the most talented, up-and-coming professional managers I've ever had the privilege to meet, Martin Puckett, who was the deputy city manager in Presque Isle. I do want to recognize the executive boards that I've served with, and particularly the 2012-2013 board, who blessed me with this tremendous opportunity. I appreciate that. I also want to recognize a few people that have been really, truly amazing in my life. You just met one of them in terms of John Bubia. You all know that we don't make it in this business without mentors. And I've had some of the best. As you already heard, as a young man, thinking that I knew everything, clueless that I didn't know anything, John encouraged me to become a manager. And the first thing that was pretty obvious is after about 15 minutes on the job, not only did I not know anything, I even knew less than that. And John was on speed dial. At the same time, a young man walked into my office, unannounced, stuck out his hand and said, "My name's John Madigan. I'm the town manager of Rumford, and if you need anything, I'm there." John and his wife have made a special trip to be down here, and I just want to recognize you, John. Thank you. I had one other individual who was a tremendous resource to me, wasn't able to make it, but I just want to go on the record as saying, "Hey, Paul Bird, thinking about you, pal." I also want to recognize the main managers who are down here and who so nicely have worn red noses that I didn't know about. They're just a tremendous group. And as we know, one of the best things about this business is that we don't compete with each other. Rarely do you find somebody who tries to get ahead by putting one of our colleagues down. And you don't have that in the private sector. It's yet one of the ways that we are tremendously different, and this profession is so wonderful. Each of these colleagues that are here today, and the ones that are still back home, and the executive board that I work with every day, just want to be able to do great things, and they're willing to be able to provide any help to any manager at any time in order to be able to proceed with the professionalism that we do as managers. So main managers, way to go. Thank you. So let's switch back to ICMA for a minute, because obviously we need to talk a little bit about what's the road ahead. And I thought about the four presidents that I've had the pleasure of working with. The first president, David Marty, brought and made the connection between you as the members and the ICMA's governance process. And it was his fearless leadership that brought the nomination process back home to the regions where it belonged. And Donnell picked up those pieces and continued to improve upon that. And then I had the pleasure of working with Dave Childs. Dave was an inspiration because what he did is he reminded us all that at the end of the day, it's our heart and our compassion and our passion that make a difference in this business. As Dave would say, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And then finally, Simon, during this last year, has elevated a fundamental change in the discussion as us, as managers, and us as a profession. That it's no longer about the technical skills that we once used in order to bring this profession forward, but it's also about those leadership skills. And so I look at that and go, okay, what am I going to do? How can I even compare to these individuals? Well, I won't. But I know that I have a great team that I'll work with, and I know that we'll take a look at a couple of things. One, the 2008 strategic plan has been almost fully implemented, and it's time for us to do another one. And so soon, in January, February, we'll be asking for your help as we begin to plot our next 10 years as a profession through that process. I want to talk to you a little bit about a little thing that I do as a hobby. I like to golf. And I know a lot of you out there do so as well. But there's one course that I have that I'd love to be able to play, and I can't. And I'll never be able to play. See, that course has requirements that certain characteristics that I can't obtain. And there's nothing I can do differently. It doesn't matter how good I am as a golfer. It doesn't matter how nice a person I am. It doesn't matter any of those items. I am never going to be able to change those. But if I got to be the king for the day, I'd change those rules, and I'd play at Augusta National. And I'd be able to play that course, but I can't. Why do I tell you this story? Because I'm afraid that there's a sense across our country and this world that some of our city halls and county offices are starting to feel like that to our members. They feel like that it's dominated by old white guys like me. And if we do not do as Dave Childs has said, and make the compassion and the sense that we care, as well as begin to seriously have the discussion about how do we change the face of some of these leadership in cities and the counties, that our citizens very well may end up feeling the same way I do, which is that I want to change the rules. What's that mean for the future of our profession? Well, it means that we may not be the county manager or the city manager anymore. It may mean that they'll elect a mayor. And beyond, so beyond the simple reason of that sort of threat to our organization, but also in terms of it's the right thing to do, I've asked Troy Brown and Tansy Haywood to lead a discussion on how we can be more inclusive and strengthen the inclusiveness in our profession and our communities. It's a dialogue that needs to be had, and we will have it during the year. I want to take a moment to talk to you just a second about my parents. I'm a blue-collar kid. I thought going to college might be the best thing I ever did. I had no visions as a young man that I would ever be able to be in this situation. My dad was a sheetrocker, hung drywall. Hard-working guy, I hardly ever saw him. He was fortunate enough to have a little small business, enough to pay the bills, but not enough to be anything fancy. And as a young man at 12 and 13 years old, he brought me on the job and asked me to taught me how to do the job by saying, you need to sand off the rough edges in the closet. And I went and did it. I had no interest in this. It was manual labor to start with. Quite frankly, that was not my cup of tea. And when I got done, Dad came in and said, you didn't do a very good job, Jim. I said, well, Dad, how can you tell? He said, well, I put a quarter down the corner and you didn't see it. And what he said to his son, if you're going to put your name on something, you do it with pride. But more importantly, this isn't a house. This is going to be somebody's home. And we need to do our work in the way that we're going to be proud, just like they're going to be proud of their home. My mom was a hot lunch worker. And what my mom did was support every child in the high school. She went to every game that she could. She was dubbed everybody's mom. And the kids loved her. She died way too early, at the young age of 64. My mom is everything. And for those of you that know me, as a clown, part of my clown name is a celebration of my mom. And one of the most amazing things when she passed away, and we asked the school if we could have each of the high school teams represented as a pallbearers, they let the kids leave early to go to school in order to go to visiting hours. And one young man, Joe Scribber, came walking through, 19 years old, had just recently graduated. And my youngest brother knew him because my youngest brother had worked with him as a wrestler. He was a 3-time champion wrestler, state wrestler. And he shook my hand, he said, "I loved your mom. Mr. Bennett, would it be okay if I pinned this medal on her?" And it was his first medal, championship state wrestling medal. And I was blown away. And I told him, of course. And then I said to him, "Joey, I'll make sure you get that back." And he looked at me very sternly and said, "Don't you dare. I want her to have that forever. Because your mom was the only person that believed in me as an underdog. I have 3. I would have never had 1 if it wasn't for your mom." And so what that lesson to me as the next week, and we went through the grievance process, was is it didn't matter where you were in life, but that you cared, and that you had compassion, and you believed in people, and that you were proud of what you did. See, my mom wasn't a hard lunch worker. She was in the school so she could do things for kids. And so as I ask you to think about your next year, I ask you to think about the things you're proud of. And if you decided to talk about what you were proud of, you would talk about the same things I did. My family, my friends, where I went to school, and ultimately where I grew up, the small town of Lisbon. See, I want you to do as my father did and rethink about what your job is. It's not about plowing snow efficiently, even though my friend Lee Feldman, as a member of the Shadow Board, would tell me that Fort Lauderdale is the most efficient plow sowers in the entire world. See, that's not the job that we're here to do. We're here to do with something that's very sacred, to protect the hometown pride. And every day you go and get to work, you're making somebody proud that they live in your town that you live in. And your citizens are the same thing. And so what I ask you to do is a couple things when you go back and during the next year. I ask you to extend that hand to the young professional and remember what it feels like and double down and make the commitment to be helpful, positive, and cheerful in this profession to the young managers that are in this business. I ask you to go back and think about ways that you can make a difference in terms of changing the dialogue, in terms of the inclusiveness that we need to accomplish as this country and the world changes. And finally, I ask you to go back and be proud of the fact that you have a very sacred mission, and that's to be part of a hometown pride. And share that with your community and your employees. In exchange, what I'll do for you is that I will never forget that you've given me the opportunity to do this. I will never forget that I'm a temporary custodian of this great honor. And as I soon come back among the ranks and down with you as just one of your members, we will work together to be able to start the next 100 years of this great association. Thank you very much.